Nigel Farage's name appears in the Epstein files, not because he knew Epstein, but because of the man who was briefing Epstein on Brexit by email in real time. Nigel Farage is in the Epstein files. Depending on which search tool you use, his name appears between 18 and 41 times across the released documents. Here's what Farage himself has said about it. I never met Epstein, and I didn't go to the island. And to be fair, this is what the files show. There's no direct evidence of any contact between Farage and Epstein, no emails, no meetings, no financial transactions. So how is he in there at all? The answer is a man called Steve Bannon, and the story of how Brexit, the global populist right, and one of the most notorious criminals of the 21st century all ended up in the same record, files, whatever you want to call it. It's one of the most significant political stories to come out of the Epstein files. Steve Bannon, former Goldman Sachs banker, executive chairman of Breitbart News, Donald Trump's former White House chief strategist. Fired by Trump in 2017, convicted of fraud, panned by Trump in 2021. One of the most consequential and controversial political operators of the modern era. Now, after leaving the White House, his project was something called The Movement, a coordinated attempt to build a network of right-wing nationalist parties across Europe. The blueprint was to replicate what had been achieved in America, but continent-wide. Marine Le Pen in France, Viktor Orbán in Hungary, Matteo Salvini in Italy, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. And at the head of the UK operation, Nigel Farage. Bannon called Farage the face of Brexit, and in Alison Clayman's 2019 documentary, The Brink, you can watch the two of them sitting together discussing the pan-European nationalist project. Farage is its most prominent figurehead. Their collaboration was public, documented, and ongoing throughout 2018 and into 2019. This is not in dispute. Now what follows is what those same years looked like, but on the other side of Bannon's diary. The Epstein files reveal that during the exact same period Bannon was working with Farage on the movement, he was also in regular, sometimes near daily, contact with Jeffrey Epstein. It wasn't social, it was political intelligence. Bannon was briefing Epstein on the operations he was running across European politics. In March 2018, Bannon told Epstein he'd become an advisor to a list of European figures that included Farage. He was presenting his access, his proximity to major political figures across the UK and Europe as a form of currency in his relationship to Epstein. In July 2018, while in London, Bannon messaged Epstein in London with Boris. 3 days earlier he'd told him, "We are overthrowing May right now." In November 2018, Bannon told Epstein he had gotten pulled into the Brexit thing this morning with Nigel, Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg. Epstein's response was to advise Bannon to stay in Britain as long as possible. Think about what this actually shows. Epstein was receiving real-time political intelligence about the most significant event in British politics from one of the key operators running it. He wasn't just a criminal, he was cultivating information as a form of power, and Bannon was feeding it to him while simultaneously running the movement Farage fronted. Whether Farage knew any of this was happening, the files don't answer that. There's nothing in there to suggest that he did. When the Epstein files went public, a photograph started circulating on social media. It appeared to show Nigel Farage and Jeffrey Epstein together, arms around each other, smiling. It spread rapidly. Reform UK called it completely fake. Digital forensics experts examined it and identified multiple indicators of AI generation: physically impossible shadows, inconsistent lighting, facial anomalies. The photo was almost certainly fabricated. But here's the problem with a fake photo. It distracted from the real story, and the real story is far more interesting and far more verifiable. The story is about a network. Epstein wasn't randomly collecting the names of politicians, he was systematically gathering political intelligence from people with access to the highest levels of power in multiple countries. Bannon was one of the most significant conduits for that intelligence. The people in Bannon's network, Farage among them, appear in the files not because they were part of anything criminal, but because Bannon made them part of the story he was selling to Epstein. Whether they knew this was happening is a question that the files don't answer either, but it's worth asking. It's always worth asking these questions. Now, there is no evidence in the Epstein files that Nigel Farage knew if Jeffrey Epstein ever met him or had any awareness of what Bannon was sharing with him. But there is clear evidence that Steve Bannon, whilst working directly with Farage on one of the most consequential political projects in recent British history, was simultaneously providing Epstein with detailed, real-time intelligence about that project. What Epstein did with that intelligence, why he collected it, and what the full picture of his political network looked like are questions the files are still helping us to answer. What it does tell us, at a minimum, is that the networks connecting politics, money and power operate in ways that are rarely visible until something like this forces them into light. The files have given us a window into this crazy kind of underground hidden world that is going on all around us, and it's definitely worth looking at.